The announcement for Flight 747 to Paris echoed through Incheon International Airport, but Sung-jae barely heard it. His fiancée, Mi-sun, was chattering about wedding venues, something about cherry blossoms and a traditional ceremony, while he nodded mechanically. His mind was elsewhere, calculating routes for the shipment arriving next week, the legitimate front of his tech company masking what really needed his attention. "Are you even listening?" Mi-sun's voice cut through his thoughts, sharp and irritated. "Yeah, cherry blossoms sound perfect," he muttered, adjusting his sunglasses. The airport was crowded for a Tuesday afternoon, families dragging luggage, business travelers rushing past with phones pressed to their ears. That's when his gaze landed on them. Time didn't slow down. That only happened in movies. But everything else seemed to fade into static noise. She was standing near the international arrivals gate, and she looked exactly the same, except different, in ways that made his chest feel tight. Her hair was longer, pulled back in a way that showed off her face, and she was wearing jeans and a simple jacket. Nothing fancy, but she'd always made everything look good. Then he saw them. 2 kids, maybe 4 years old, holding her hands. A boy and a girl. The boy had his mother's dark skin and bright eyes, while the girl had lighter skin, and when she turned her head, Sung-jae's entire world tilted sideways because she had his eyes, his exact eyes. The same shape, the same way they crinkled at the corners. "Sung-jae!" Mi-sun was tugging at his sleeve now. What are you staring at?" He couldn't answer, couldn't move nor breathe properly. The woman, Kinsley, hadn't seen him yet. She was crouched down, adjusting the little girl's backpack, saying something that made both kids giggle. The sound carried across the terminal, and it hit him like a physical blow. 4 years ago she'd left. No explanation, no forwarding address, just a note that said she couldn't do this anymore. He'd searched for months, used every connection he had, but it was like she'd vanished into thin air. And now, here she was, with 2 kids who looked exactly like what their children would have looked like if— "Oh my God, is that her?" Mi-sun's voice had gone from annoyed to venomous in seconds. "That's the one you were with before me, isn't it? The foreigner?" Sung-jae barely registered the slur, and his feet were moving before he could realize what he was doing, weaving through the crowd. Mi-sun was calling after him, her heels clicking frantically on the polished floor, but he didn't care. He needed to know, needed to understand what it was that was going on. Kinsley straightened up, and that's when her eyes met his across the terminal. The smile on her face died instantly. Her grip on the children's hands tightened, and for a second, he thought she might run. But she didn't. She just stood there, frozen, while he closed the distance between them. "Mommy, who's that?" the little girl asked, tugging on Kinsley's jacket. Kinsley's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at the kids, then back at him, and the expression on her face was something he'd never seen before. Fear mixed with guilt, mixed with something else he couldn't quite name. "Kinsley," he said, and his voice came out rougher than he intended. "What? Who? We need to go," she said quickly, already pulling the kids away. "Come on, babies. We're going to miss our connection." "Wait." He reached out but stopped himself. The boy was staring at him with open curiosity, and the girl was hiding half behind her mother's leg, peeking out with those eyes that were definitely his eyes. "Are they— Kinsley, are they mine?" The question hung in the air between them like broken glass. People were starting to stare, probably wondering why some guy in an expensive coat was harassing a woman with 2 little kids. Mi-sun had caught up, her face flushed and angry, so already opening her mouth to say something cutting. "No," Kinsley said, but her voice cracked on the word. "They're not. You need to leave us alone." "You're lying." He couldn't prove it, not standing here in the middle of an airport, but he knew. The girl had his eyes, his chin. The boy had that same stubborn set to his jaw that Sung-jae saw in the mirror every morning. "Kinsley, please," I said no. She was backing away now, the kids stumbling to keep up. "Stay away from us. I mean it, Seung-jae. Stay away." Mi-sun grabbed his arm, her nails digging in even through his jacket. "Let her go. She's obviously trash who—" "Shut up," he snapped, shaking her off. But by the time he looked back, Kinsley was already disappearing into the crowd, the twins' heads bobbing between taller passengers. He started after them. But Mi-sun was making a scene now, her voice getting louder, and security was starting to drift their way. His phone was in his hand before he'd made a conscious decision, dialing a number he hadn't used in months. "Tae-young, I need you to pull security footage from Incheon. Terminal 2, international arrivals right now. I need to know where she went." "Who?" Tae-young's voice was cautious. As his second in command, and head of their legitimate security operations, he knew better than to ask too many questions. But this was clearly unexpected. "Just do it. And find out what flight she's on. I need everything." Pause for a second. What do you think is about to happen? Drop your wildest theory in the comments before you keep watching. Subscribe so you're here for every story that makes you feel this alive. And hit that like button if you're already hooked, then dive back in. Because trust me, you're not ready for where this is going. The best part is still ahead. He ended the call and stood there, surrounded by rushing travelers and departure announcements, with Mi-sun yelling at him about embarrassing her in public, and how dare he chase after some woman from his past. But all he could see was that little girl's face, looking up at him with his own eyes, before her mother dragged her away. 4 years. She'd kept them from him for 4 years. The realization settled into his bones like ice, and underneath it, something darker was stirring. She'd left because she was pregnant? Because she didn't want him to know? He'd spent months thinking she'd stopped loving him, that maybe he'd done something wrong, pushed too hard. I'd been too involved in business she couldn't understand. But if those kids were his, and every instinct he had was screaming that they were, then she'd stolen 4 years of their lives from him. 4 years of birthdays and first words and everything else parents were supposed to have. "Are you even listening to me?" Mi-sun shrieked, and several people turned to stare. "We're done," he said flatly, still staring at the spot where Kinsley had vanished. "The engagement's off. Go home." You can't be serious. Because of her? Because of some woman who clearly wants nothing to do with you? You're throwing away everything we have for— I said go home. He turned to look at her finally, and whatever she saw in his face made her take a step back. "I'll have someone return the ring and your things. Don't contact me again." He left her standing there, mouth open in shock, and headed for the exit. His phone was already ringing, Tae-young probably with information, but he let it go to voicemail. He needed to think, needed to figure out his next move. Because Kinsley could run all she wanted, but she'd made one critical mistake. She'd come back to Korea, his territory, his city, and he had resources she couldn't begin to imagine. He was going to find her. He was going to find his children. And then she was going to explain exactly why she'd thought it was okay to keep them from him. The black car was waiting at the curb, his driver straightening up when he saw Sung-jae approaching. "Where to, sir?" "The office," he said, sliding into the back seat. "And call everyone in. We have work to do." The penthouse office overlooked the Han River, and floor-to-ceiling windows showing the sprawl of Seoul at night. Sung-jae had been standing there for 20 minutes, watching the city lights blur together while Tae-young pulled every string they had. "Found her," Tae-young said, walking in without knocking. He knew better than most when formality could be skipped. "She flew in from Johannesburg 3 days ago, staying at a small hotel in Taiwan, the kind that doesn't ask too many questions about ID, paid cash." "Johannesburg? Seung-jae turned from the window. That explained why he'd never found her. South Africa was about as far as you could get from Korea without leaving the planet. Why come back now? Don't know yet, but Tai-young hesitated, which was never a good sign. There's something else. She's been making calls to hospitals, pediatric oncology departments. The words hit like a punch to the gut. Which kid? Can't confirm yet, but based on the appointments she's been trying to book, probably the boy. Name's Malik, by the way. The girl is Soo-min. Seung-jae had to sit down. His son, because that boy was his son, he was sure of it now, was sick. Sick enough that Kinsley had risked coming back to Korea, to a place she'd clearly been running from. She must have been desperate. The best pediatric cancer specialists in Asia were here in Seoul, and if she'd exhausted options in South Africa. "Get me a meeting with Dr. Yi-jun at Samsung Medical Center," he said, his mind already working through possibilities. "Tell him it's urgent. Family matter." "Boss, if you go storming in there, she'll run again. Or she's already spooked. Our guys spotted her checking over her shoulder constantly. She knows you're looking." "Then don't let her see them. I want eyes on her 24/7, but at a distance. And find out exactly what's wrong with the boy. I need details." Tae-young nodded and left, already pulling out his phone. Seung-jae stood up and started pacing, adrenaline making it impossible to sit still. A son. A daughter. 4 years old, which meant... He did the math quickly. She must have been pregnant when she left. Maybe didn't even know yet. Or maybe she did, and that's exactly why she ran. But why? They'd been good together. Really good. She'd known about his business, not all of it, but enough. She'd never seemed scared of him, never flinched when his associates showed up at odd hours, or when he had to leave in the middle of the night for work. She'd just kissed him goodbye and told him to be careful. So what changed? His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. "Yeah." "Stop looking for me." Kinsley's voice was quiet but firm, with that slight South African accent he'd always loved. "Please, Seung-jae, just let us go." "Let you go?" He couldn't keep the anger out of his voice. "You kept my kids from me for 4 years, and now you want me to just walk away?" "They're not." She stopped, and he could hear her breathing on the other end. "They're my kids. I raised them. You don't get to show up now and... Is Malik sick?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "Kinsley, if our son is sick, I can help. I have connections to every major hospital in Seoul. The best doctors, the best treatment facilities. We don't need your help," she said, but her voice was shaking now. "We don't need anything from you. Clearly you do, or you wouldn't have come back here. How bad is it?" Another long pause. Then, "Leukemia. Early stage, but the treatments in South Africa aren't working as well as they should. He needs specialized care, and everything I found said Seoul has some of the best programs in the world. But we're managing. We don't need you involved." "The hell you don't." He was already grabbing his jacket. "Where are you? I'm coming." "No." The word came out sharp and panicked. "Seung-jae, I'm serious. If you care about them at all, you'll stay away. They don't know you. They don't..." Soo-min asks questions sometimes about her dad. Some, but Malik doesn't even. He's too young to understand. And with everything he's going through, the last thing he needs is some stranger showing up claiming to be his father. "I'm not a stranger. I'm their father." "You're a stranger to them," she said quietly. "And that's my fault, I know. But I can't let you mess this up. Not now. Not when Malik is so fragile." The words stung more than he wanted to admit. "Why'd you leave?" "That doesn't matter anymore. It matters to me." He could hear voices in the background, the kids, asking who she was talking to. Kinsley moved away from them, her voice dropping even lower. I left because I had to, because staying would have put them in danger. Your world, Seung-jae. It's not safe for children. I found out I was pregnant, and I realized I couldn't raise kids in that environment. I couldn't watch them grow up knowing what you did for a living. You think I would have let anything happen to them? To you? It's not about what you'd let happen. It's about the reality of your life. People know who you are, what you do. Eventually someone would have tried to use us against you, and I couldn't. I wouldn't risk that. Seung-jae leaned against his desk, the anger draining out of him and leaving something heavier behind. She wasn't entirely wrong. There'd been incidents over the years, rivals making threats, deals going bad, situations where people he cared about became targets. He'd always handled it, always kept the violence away from anything personal, but the threat was always there. I can protect you, he said. All three of you. Better than you can protect yourself. Maybe. But at what cost? I want my kids to have normal lives, Seung-jae. School and friends and birthday parties. Not bodyguards and armored cars and learning to spot threats before they can read properly. That's not. Yes, it is. You know it is. I saw your life. I was part of your life. And I couldn't do that to them. She was crying now. He could hear it in her voice. The sound made his chest hurt. Kinsley, I have to go. Please don't look for us. If you ever loved me at all, you'll let us go. I can't do that. They're my kids too. They're my kids. I'm the one who was there for every nightmare, every scraped knee, every first step. You don't get to claim them just because of biology. That's not fair. Life's not fair, she said, and there was steel in her voice now, under the tears. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, and I'm sorry I left the way I did. But I'd do it again. Every single time. To keep them safe. The line went dead. Seung-jae stared at his phone, a dozen different emotions fighting for dominance. She'd hung up on him. After dropping that bomb about their son being sick, about why she'd left, she'd just ended the conversation. His phone rang again, but it was just Tae-young with an update. Got her hotel room narrowed down. 3rd floor, room 312. Want me to? No, don't approach her. But I want someone watching that room at all times. If she leaves, I want to know where she goes. If she meets with anyone, I want to know who. But stay back. Don't let her see you. Got it. Also, Dr. Yi-jun can see you tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Fine. And Tae-young, start looking into treatment options for childhood leukemia. I want a full report on my desk by tomorrow afternoon. Best hospitals, best doctors, experimental treatments, everything. Already on it, boss. Seung-jae ended the call and walked back to the window. Somewhere out there in the city, Kinsley was probably holding both kids close, maybe telling them everything was going to be okay. His kids. His son was fighting cancer. His daughter had probably never heard his name before today, and the woman he'd once thought he might marry someday had built an entire life without him. She thought she was protecting them by keeping them away from him, but she was wrong. Whatever threats existed in his world, they existed whether he was involved or not. At least, if he was in their lives, he could do something about it. He could use his resources, his connections, everything he'd built to keep them safe, and starting with making sure Malik got the best possible treatment. Dr. Yi-jun's office smelled like antiseptic and old coffee. Seung-jae sat across from him, ignoring the way the doctor kept glancing nervously at Tae-young standing by the door. People always got nervous around Tae-young. Something about the way he stood, perfectly still, but somehow coiled, ready to move. So this is about your son? Dr. Yi-jun asked, shuffling papers on his desk. He was in his 50s, with graying hair and the kind of tired eyes that came from years of delivering bad news to parents. Maybe, Seung-jae said carefully. His mother brought him from South Africa for treatment, acute lymphoblastic leukemia. I need to know what his options are here. Has he been seen by anyone yet? Do you have his medical records? Not yet, but I will soon. He leaned forward slightly. Assume money isn't an issue. What's the best possible care you can provide? Dr. Yi-jun's eyebrows rose, but he recovered quickly. Probably not the first time some wealthy parent had walked in, ready to throw money at a problem. Well, all depends on the specifics of his case, stage of progression, how he's responded to initial treatments, genetic markers. But in general, for pediatric leukemia, we have excellent success rates. Chemotherapy protocols have improved significantly in recent years, and if needed, we have access to clinical trials for newer targeted therapies. What about stem cell transplants? Sometimes necessary, sometimes not. We'd need to evaluate his case specifically. The doctor paused, studying Seung-jae's face. Mr. Kang, I have to ask, are you currently involved in this child's medical care? Does his mother know you're here? She knows I want to help. She's resistant. Ah. Dr. Yi-jun sat back in his chair. That complicates things. Legally, I can't discuss a patient's case with you without parental consent, even if you are the biological father, which I'm assuming hasn't been legally established. Working on it. Then my hands are tied. If you can get the mother to sign consent forms, allowing you access to medical information, I'm happy to help. But until then, he spread his hands apologetically. Seung-jae stood up. If a woman named Kinsley Thompson comes in with a 4-year-old boy named Malik, you call me immediately. And whatever he needs, whatever treatment, tests, procedures, I'm paying for it. Set up an account. Send me the paperwork. But make sure he gets the best care possible. Mr. Kang, I can't accept payment from you without the mother's consent either. Medical ethics are... Then figure out a way around it. He pulled out a business card, the legitimate one for his tech company. That's my direct line. Whatever it takes to help that kid, you do it. We'll worry about the paperwork later. Dr. Yi-jun took the card reluctantly. I'll see what I can do. But Mr. Kang, forcing your way into this situation might not be the best approach. If the mother has concerns about your involvement, perhaps family counseling or mediation. Thanks for your time, doctor. Outside the hospital, the morning air was sharp and cold. Ta-young fell into step beside him as they headed for the car. So what's the play? She has to bring him in for treatment eventually. When she does, I'll be ready. And if she doesn't, if she goes to a different hospital, then we make sure every pediatric oncology department in Seoul knows to contact me if they see her. Seung-jae climbed into the back seat. How's surveillance going? She left the hotel this morning. Took the kids to a park in Gangnam, Yangjae Stream Park. Stayed for about an hour, then went to a convenience store. Kid, Malik, looked tired. Kept asking to sit down. She carried him most of the way back. The image made Seung-jae's jaw tighten. His son, too tired to walk because of the cancer eating away at his healthy cells. While he'd been sitting in boardrooms and managing shipments, his kid had been fighting for his life halfway across the world. Boss, if you want to approach her again, now might be the time. She looked exhausted. Might be more willing to talk. No, she needs to come to me. He'd thought about this all night. Kinsley was scared. Of him, of his world, of what his involvement might mean. Chasing her would only make it worse. But I want to make sure she knows help is available. Anonymous donations to her hotel. Food deliveries. Make it look like luck, not surveillance. Tae-young nodded slowly. You're playing the long game. I'm being smart. She thinks I'm going to force my way in, but that's not how this works. She's protecting our kids. I get that. I just need her to see that I can help better than she can, on her own. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Just an address and a time. 3 p.m. today. "It's her," Tae-young said, reading over his shoulder. Want me to check if it's safe? She's not going to ambush me in broad daylight with 2 sick kids. But yeah, send someone ahead to scout it anyway. The address turned out to be another park, this one smaller and quieter than the one she'd visited that morning. When Seung-jae arrived, alone, at Tae-young's extremely reluctant agreement, Kinsley was sitting on a bench near the playground. The kids were playing on the swings, but Malik was moving slowly, his movements careful and deliberate. Seung-jae approached cautiously, hands in his pockets, so he wouldn't look threatening. "You wanted to talk?" "Sit." She didn't look at him, just kept watching the kids. "But stay over there. I don't want them getting curious." He sat on the opposite end of the bench, leaving several feet between them. Up close, and he could see the exhaustion written in every line of her face. Dark circles under her eyes, tension in her shoulders, the way her hands wouldn't stop fidgeting with the strap of her bag. "I've been thinking about what you said," she started, still not looking at him. "About helping. And I hate this. I hate that I have to even consider it. But Malik's getting worse." "How bad?" "The treatments in South Africa weren't working well enough. He was in remission for a while, but it came back. Stronger. The doctors there said he needed more aggressive treatment, the kind they don't have access to. So I saved everything I could, borrowed more, and brought us here." "But," her voice cracked slightly, "but the hospitals here want payment up front for non-citizens, and I don't have that kind of money. Tell me what you need." "I need—" She finally turned to look at him, and there were tears in her eyes. "I need him to get better. That's all I need. Everything else is, I can deal with everything else. But if he dies, because I couldn't afford treatment—" "He's not going to die." Seung-jae said it firmly, like he could make it true through sheer force of will. "I've already talked to Dr. Yi-jun at Samsung Medical Center. He's one of the best pediatric oncologists in Asia. I can get Malik in to see him tomorrow." "Just like that?" "Just like that." She laughed, but it sounded bitter. "Must be nice having that kind of power. Snap your fingers and doors open." "It has its uses." He wanted to move closer, but forced himself to stay still. "Kinsley, I know you don't trust me. I know you think my being involved will somehow hurt them. But right now, what hurts them is watching you struggle alone. Let me help. Not because I'm trying to take them from you, but because they're my kids too, and I can't just stand by and watch my son suffer. If you get involved, people will know about them. Your enemies, your rivals. Everyone in your world will know you have kids, and that makes them targets. They're already targets if anyone connects them to you, and through you, to me. At least if I'm involved, I can provide actual protection instead of hoping nobody notices." She was quiet for a long moment, watching Soo-min push Malik gently on the swing. The little girl was being so careful with her brother, like she understood he was fragile. It made Seung-jae's chest hurt. "I have conditions," Kinsley said finally. "Well, okay. You pay for treatment, fine. You can meet them properly. But slowly. I'm not throwing you at them all at once. They need time to adjust." "Fair enough. And if at any point I think your involvement is putting them in danger, we're gone. I'll take them and disappear, and this time you won't find us. I don't care how many resources you have." He wanted to argue that point, but knew it wouldn't help. "All right. And one more thing." She turned to face him fully now, her expression hard. "You don't get to play dad when it's convenient and disappear when it's not. If you're in, you're all in. That means hospital visits, and sleepless nights, and temper tantrums, and everything else that comes with being a parent. Not just the fun parts." "I'm in," he said immediately. "Whatever it takes. So I'm in." She studied his face for a long moment, like she was trying to see through to his real intentions. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her, because she finally nodded. Okay, we'll try this." But Sung-jae, if you screw this up, if you hurt them in any way, I swear, I won't. He meant it. Whatever else he was, whatever lines he'd crossed in his business, he wouldn't hurt his own kids. You have my word. Your word. She almost smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. 4 years ago, I thought I knew what that meant. I thought I knew who you were. And then I found out about all of it. The money laundering, the smuggling, the way you'd smile at me over dinner, and then go handle some situation that might have gotten people killed. I couldn't reconcile those two versions of you. I'm still the same person I was then. I know. That's what scares me. The kids didn't understand what was happening when Kinsley brought them over to where Sung-jae was still sitting. He stood up slowly, trying not to look threatening or too eager, very aware that this moment was going to set the tone for everything that came after. Babies, I want you to meet someone, Kinsley said, crouching down to their level. Her voice was steady, but Sung-jae could hear the tension underneath. This is your daddy. Soo-min's eyes went wide. She looked up at Sung-jae, then back at her mother, then at Sung-jae again. Our real daddy. The one from Korea. Yes, baby, your real daddy. Malik didn't say anything, just pressed closer to his mother's side. But he looked even more tired up close, his skin a little too pale, dark circles under his eyes that no 4-year-old should have. Sung-jae knelt down, bringing himself to their eye level. Hi, I know this is probably confusing. Your mom's right. I'm your dad. And I'm really, really happy to meet you both. Where were you? Soo-min asked bluntly. She had that direct, unfiltered way of speaking that little kids had, asking the questions adults danced around. Mommy said you lived far away, but we're in Korea now. This is where you live. Yeah, I live here. But I didn't know about you two until a few days ago. If I had known, I would have come to meet you a long time ago. How come you didn't know? She was eyeing him suspiciously now, arms crossed. Don't daddies always know about their kids? Kinsley jumped in. Sometimes grown-up things are complicated, Soo-min, but your daddy knows now, and he wants to be part of your life. Is that okay? Soo-min considered this seriously. Will you come to my birthday party? It's next month. Mommy said we might not have a party this year because of Malik being sick, but maybe if you help. I'll definitely come to your birthday party, Sung-jae said, his throat tight. And we can make it the biggest party you've ever had if you want. With a bounce house? Sure, with a bounce house. That earned him a tentative smile. But Malik still hadn't said anything, just kept watching him with those serious, tired eyes. Sung-jae tried a different approach. Your mom tells me you've been pretty brave lately, he said gently. Going to doctors, getting treatments. Teen, that takes a lot of courage. Malik shrugged slightly. I don't feel brave. I just feel tired. Well, I think you're brave anyway. And I'm going to help make sure you get the best doctors here in Seoul, okay? People who can help you feel better. Will they make me all better? So I can play soccer again? They're going to try really hard, and I'm going to make sure they have everything they need to help you. That seemed to satisfy him, or maybe he was just too tired to ask more questions. He leaned against Kinsley, and she automatically wrapped an arm around him, supporting his weight. We should go, she said quietly. He needs to rest. Sung-jae nodded, standing up. When's his next appointment? Tomorrow afternoon, 2 o'clock at Samsung Medical Center. Dr. Yi-jun, I'll meet you there. Her eyebrows rose. You already? Of course you did. Fine. But Sung-jae, at the hospital, you're just a concerned family member. Not what? Not who I actually am? He kept his voice low so the kids wouldn't hear. I know how to behave in public, Kinsley. I'm not going to show up with an entourage and start making threats. That's not what I meant. I I need you to let the doctors do their jobs. No throwing money around to skip lines or demanding special treatment that other kids aren't getting. The money's gonna help regardless. Better equipment, more staff, maybe funding for research. But fine, I'll be discreet. She looked like she wanted to argue more, but Malik was already half asleep on his feet. We'll see you tomorrow then. Seung-jae watched them walk away, Soo-min skipping ahead while Kinsley carried Malik, his son, or his daughter. Real, solid. Here. Not some abstract concept anymore, but actual kids with personalities and favorite foods and fears and everything else that made them human. His phone was ringing before they'd even left the park. Tae-young, of course. How'd it go? Fine, good. I'm meeting them at the hospital tomorrow. Boss, we've got a situation. The shipment we've been waiting on. There's been a complication. One of Hwang's guys intercepted it. He's holding it ransom. Seung-jae closed his eyes. Hwang Jin-soo, a mid-level player who'd been getting bolder lately, testing boundaries. Normally, this would be his top priority, the kind of thing he'd handle personally to send a message. But right now, handle it, he said. Handle it? Boss, this is... I know what it is. But I trust you to deal with it. Use whatever leverage you need. If Hwang wants to negotiate, set up a meeting for next week. If he wants to play hardball, remind him what happened to the last person who stole from us. There was a long pause. You're really doing this? The family thing? Yeah. I'm really doing this. Okay then. I'll handle Hwang. You focus on whatever this is. The next day, Seung-jae arrived at the hospital 15 minutes early. He dressed down, jeans and a simple jacket instead of his usual suits, trying to look like a normal worried father instead of whatever else people saw when they looked at him. Tae-young had wanted to come along, but Seung-jae had refused. Kinsley was already on edge about his involvement. Adding obvious security would only make it worse. He found them in the waiting room. Malik was curled up in Kinsley's lap, while Soo-min was coloring in a book, found her tongue sticking out in concentration. When she saw him, she waved enthusiastically. You came. Of course I came. I said I would. He sat down next to them, keeping a respectful distance. How are you doing, buddy? Malik just shrugged. He looked even more exhausted than yesterday, if that was possible. He had a rough night, Kinsley said quietly. Fever. We almost came to the emergency room, but it broke around dawn. You should have called me. I could have what? Made the fever go away faster? She shook her head. I've been handling this for months, Seung-jae. I know what I'm doing. Before he could respond, a nurse called Malik's name. They all stood up, but the nurse held up a hand. Just parents, please. Siblings can wait here. I want to come, Soo-min protested immediately. I know, baby. But the doctors need space to examine Malik. You stay here and keep coloring, okay? We'll be right back. In the examination room, Dr. Yi-jun was waiting with a younger doctor he introduced as his resident. They started with basic questions: symptoms, previous treatments, medical history. Kinsley answered everything while Seung-jae stayed quiet, watching the way the doctors examined Malik, looking at his eyes, checking his lymph nodes, listening to his heart. The records you sent over from South Africa were helpful, Dr. Yi-jun said, typing notes into his computer. But we'll need to run some new tests to see where we are currently. Blood work, bone marrow biopsy, imaging. How long will all that take? Kinsley asked. The blood work we can do today. Results by tomorrow. The biopsy we'll schedule for later this week. And then what? Well, what's the treatment plan? That depends on what the tests show, but based on his history and current presentation, I'd say we're looking at an intensive chemotherapy protocol, possibly radiation. We'll know more once we have current data. Malik, who'd been quiet through all of this, suddenly spoke up. Will it hurt? Dr. Yi-jun crouched down to his level. Some of it might be uncomfortable, but we'll do everything we can to make sure you're not in pain. And the nurses here are really good at making the medicine part not so scary. Deal? Deal, Malik said, but he didn't sound convinced. They did the blood draw right there. Malik barely flinched, which told Sung-jae this wasn't his first time, and scheduled the follow-up appointments. Through it all, Sung-jae stayed in the background, letting Kinsley take the lead, but absorbing every detail. The medical terminology, the prognosis indicators, the survival rates the doctor carefully didn't quite spell out. 70% 5-year survival rate for pediatric ALL, the research he'd done had said, which sounded good until you flipped it around and realized it meant 30% of kids didn't make it. And those were just statistics, numbers on a page. They didn't account for individual factors, for complications, for all the ways things could go wrong. Mr. Kang, Dr. Yijun was looking at him expectantly. Did you have any questions? Is he in the 70 or the 30? Seung-jae asked bluntly. It's not that simple. Every case is different. But based on what you know right now, your professional opinion, what are his odds? The doctor exchanged a glance with Kinsley, who nodded permission. Right now, I'd say he's got good odds. The cancer's aggressive, but he's young and otherwise healthy. If he responds well to treatment, probably 85%. And if he doesn't respond well, then we adjust the protocol. We have options. But let's not borrow trouble before we know what we're dealing with, okay? Outside, Kinsley was quiet as they collected Soo-min and headed for the exit. Seung-jae wanted to say something comforting, something that would make the fear in her eyes go away, but everything that came to mind sounded hollow. Thank you for coming, she said finally, when they reached the parking lot. It helped, having someone else there, someone who cares. Of course I care, he's my son. I know. I'm starting to see that. She adjusted Malik in her arms. The kid had fallen asleep almost immediately after the blood draw. Look, the hotel we're staying at, it's not great, especially for Malik right now. Do you know anywhere better? Somewhere cleaner, quieter, with a kitchen so I can cook proper meals? Sung-jae's mind immediately went to his penthouse, but he caught himself. Too fast. Too much. I have a property in Gangnam, 4-bedroom, fully furnished. There's 24-hour security, but they're discreet. You wouldn't even know they were there. I can't afford. You're not paying for it. Consider it part of me helping with treatment costs. She looked like she wanted to argue, but Malik stirred in her arms, whimpering slightly in his sleep. Okay, fine, but just until he's better, and we can go back to South Africa. Sure, Seung-jae said, even though they both knew she wasn't going anywhere if Malik needed ongoing treatment. Whatever you need. The apartment was in one of the most secure buildings in Gangnam, with armed guards in the lobby disguised as regular security, cameras on every floor, and a private elevator that required a key card to access the upper floors. Tae-yang had arranged everything overnight: furniture, groceries, toys for the kids, medical supplies in case Malik needed anything urgently. When Kinsley walked in with the twins, her jaw actually dropped. Seung-jae, this is too much. It's nothing. I own the building anyway. You own of course you do. She set down their bags, looking around at the gleaming kitchen, the huge windows overlooking the city. The kids are going to destroy this place. Then they destroy it. It's just stuff. Soo-min was already racing from room to room, shrieking with delight over the size of everything. Malik was moving more slowly, but even he seemed impressed. Mommy, there's a TV in every bedroom. I see that, baby. Don't touch anything yet, okay? But Sung-jae was already showing him the entertainment system, pulling up streaming services full of kids' shows. Within minutes, Malik was settled on the couch with a blanket, absorbed in some cartoon about talking animals. He needs to rest anyway, Kinsley said, coming to stand beside Sung-jae. They were close enough that he could smell her perfume, same one she'd worn 4 years ago, something light and floral. The blood draw always wipes him out. There's a bedroom on the ground floor if he wants to lie down properly, or the couch is fine, whatever works. Sung-jae. She was looking at him now, really looking, in a way she hadn't since the airport. Why are you doing all this? And don't say because they're your kids. There's got to be more to it than that. He thought about lying, about giving her some easy answer that wouldn't complicate things further. But she'd always been able to tell when he wasn't being completely honest. Because when you left, it almost destroyed me. I spent months looking for you, thinking I'd done something wrong, or that you just stopped caring. And then, when I finally moved on, or thought I had, you show up with 2 kids who have my eyes and my stubbornness and everything I didn't know I wanted until I saw them. So yeah, they're my kids, and I'd do anything for them. But also, he paused, trying to find the right words. Also, I never stopped caring about you. Even when I got engaged to Mi-sun, even when I tried to convince myself I was over it, I wasn't. And now you're back, and you need help, and maybe this is my chance to prove I'm not just the guy who operates in shadows and makes morally questionable decisions. Maybe I can be someone you don't have to run from. She was quiet for a long time, her expression unreadable. I didn't leave because I stopped caring either. I left because I cared too much, because I was falling for you so hard it scared me. And then I found out about the pregnancy, and about your real business, all at the same time. And I had to choose between what I wanted and what was safe for them. You chose them. Of course I chose them. I'd choose them every time. But there was something sad in her voice when she said it. Like choosing them had meant giving up something else she'd wanted just as badly. What if you didn't have to choose? What if there was a way to have both? There isn't. Your world and safe kids don't exist in the same space. Then I'll change my world. She laughed, but it sounded pained. You can't just change who you are, Sung-jae, and I'm not asking you to. I'm just saying we need to be realistic about what this is. You're helping with Malik's treatment. You're getting to know your kids. That's good. That's what they need. But don't make this into something it's not. Before he could respond, Sumin came running back in. Daddy, can I have the bedroom with the pink walls? Please, please, please. The word daddy hit him right in the chest. She'd said it so naturally, like she'd been saying it her whole life instead of just since yesterday. Yeah, you can have whatever room you want. Yay. She grabbed his hand. Come see, you have to see. There's a whole shelf for books and everything. He let her drag him away, but glanced back at Kinsley. She was watching them with an expression he couldn't quite read, something between hope and fear, and a dozen other things. This was going to be complicated. Messy. Probably impossible. But he was going to try anyway, because the alternative was walking away from his kids, and he couldn't do that. Wouldn't do that. So the first week in the new apartment established a routine of sorts. Sung-jae came by every morning, usually with breakfast from whatever bakery or restaurant Tae-young had scouted out the night before. He'd spend a few hours with the kids before heading to his office to handle business, then come back in the evening for dinner. Kinsley maintained careful distance, friendly but not friendly, always making sure there was space between them. Malik's test results came back, showing the cancer was indeed aggressive, but treatable. Dr. Yi-jun started him on a chemotherapy protocol that meant hospital visits 3 times a week. Seung-jae rearranged his entire schedule around those appointments, always there in the waiting room with coloring books for Sumin and tablets loaded with games for Malik. "Sant, you don't have to come to every appointment," Kinsley said one day, watching him help Malik with a puzzle. "I know you have work. Work can wait. This is more important." "Is it though? I mean, don't people depend on you? For their jobs, their livelihoods. I have people who can handle the day-to-day stuff. That's what delegation is for. She didn't push it, but he could tell she was thinking about what kind of business could run itself while he focused on family. She'd seen enough 4 years ago to know his empire wasn't exactly legal, but she didn't know the full scope. Probably better that way. The chemo made Malik sick. Really sick. He'd come home from treatments exhausted and nauseous, barely able to keep down water, let alone food. Seung-jae learned to carry him when his legs gave out, to hold his hair back when he threw up, to stay up all night when the medications made sleeping impossible. It was harder than any negotiation he'd ever sat through, more terrifying than any threat he'd ever faced. "I hate this," Malik whispered one night, curled up in Seung-jae's lap while Kinsley made tea in the kitchen. "I hate being sick all the time." "I know, buddy. I hate it too." "Am I going to die?" The question caught him completely off guard. "What?" No, you're not going to die." Tommy at the hospital died. His mom was crying and the nurses said he went to heaven. I don't want to go to heaven yet. Seung-jae tightened his arms around him, trying to figure out what to say. How did you explain death to a 4-year-old? How did you promise him everything would be okay when you couldn't actually guarantee that? You're not going anywhere except maybe Disney World once you're better, okay? You're going to beat this, and then we're going to do all the fun stuff we haven't gotten to do yet. Like what? Like, I don't know, whatever you want. Soccer games, amusement parks, trips to the beach. Maybe we'll get a dog. You want a dog? Really? Malik's eyes lit up, the first real excitement Seung-jae had seen in days. Mommy always said we couldn't have pets because our apartment was too small. Well, this apartment isn't too small. So, yeah, when you're feeling better, we'll get a dog. Kinsley appeared in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of tea. She'd heard the whole conversation. He could tell from the look on her face. Not angry, exactly, but something complicated. Later, after Malik had fallen asleep and they'd moved him to his bedroom, when she cornered Seung-jae in the kitchen. You can't promise him things like that. Like what? A dog? Like he's definitely going to get better. Like he's definitely going to survive this. You don't know that, Seung-jae. Nobody knows that. He needs hope. Hope keeps you fighting. False hope can be worse than no hope at all. She was gripping her tea mug so hard her knuckles were white. When my grandmother was dying, everyone kept telling her she'd be fine. She'd beat it. Just stay positive. And she did. She stayed positive right up until the end, and then she was gone, and all that positivity didn't mean anything. Malik isn't your grandmother. He's 4 years old with an 85% survival rate. Those are good odds. 15% of kids still die. Her voice cracked. 15% of parents have to bury their babies, and I can't be one of them. I won't be one of them. He wanted to hug her, to offer some kind of comfort, but she'd made it clear physical boundaries existed for a reason. He's going to make it, Kinsley. I'm not saying that because I'm delusional, or because I don't understand the statistics. I'm saying it because I'm going to make sure he gets every possible advantage. The best doctors, the best treatment, experimental therapies if we need them. You can't buy your way out of cancer. Maybe not. But I can buy him the best chance. She was crying now, silent tears running down her face. This time, he didn't ask permission, just pulled her into his arms. She resisted for maybe half a second before collapsing against him, while her whole body shaking with sobs she'd probably been holding in for months. I'm so tired, she whispered against his chest. I'm so tired of being strong and positive and keeping it together for them. I just want him to be okay. I know you do. And he will be. We'll make sure of it. 3 weeks into treatment, something shifted. Malik's energy started coming back. Not all at once. and he still had bad days when the chemo knocked him flat. But there were good hours too. Hours when he wanted to play, when he laughed at Sumin's jokes, when he acted like a normal 4-year-old instead of a cancer patient. Dr. Yijun was cautiously optimistic. The cancer markers are decreasing. We're not in remission yet, but we're heading in the right direction. Kinsley cried in the hospital bathroom after that appointment. Happy tears this time, the kind that came from relief so profound, it hurt. Seungjae waited outside, giving her privacy but ready if she needed him. "Thank you," she said, when she finally emerged, eyes red but smiling. "For everything, for being here, for helping, for being you." "Being me? You know what I mean. 4 years ago, I thought you were two different people, the man I loved and the criminal I discovered. But you're not. You're just you. Complicated and morally gray, but also capable of sitting up all night with a sick kid and making him believe everything's going to be okay. Is that a compliment? I think so. I'm still figuring it out." They'd grown closer over the past weeks, falling into an easy partnership built on shared goals and midnight conversations over coffee. The walls Kinsley had built were still there, but they were lower now, easier to see over. She'd started touching his arm when she talked, standing closer than strictly necessary, laughing at his jokes, instead of just politely smiling. "Daddy, watch this." Sumin was in the park, hanging upside down from the monkey bars. They'd started coming here most afternoons when Malik felt good enough, letting the kids burn off energy while the adults sat on benches and pretended to have everything under control. "That's great, baby. Very impressive." He turned to Kinsley. "Does she know she's going to break her neck doing that?" "Probably. But telling her that just makes her want to do it more. Stubborn just like you, actually. I'm not stubborn. I'm determined. That's just stubborn with better PR." They watched the kids play for a while in comfortable silence. Then Kinsley said, "I've been thinking about what happens after. When Malik's in remission and doesn't need constant monitoring anymore." "Okay." Seungjae tried to keep his voice neutral, but his heart rate kicked up. This was it, the conversation he'd been dreading. The one where she said they were going back to South Africa now that the crisis had passed. "I can't take them back," she continued. "Not immediately, anyway. He'll need follow-up appointments for years. And Sumin started to really bond with you, and taking that away from her it wouldn't be fair. So you're staying?" He couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. "For now. Maybe permanently. I don't know yet. But I think maybe I was wrong about your world being incompatible with raising kids. You've kept them safe. You've kept US safe. And you're right that threats exist whether you're involved or not. At least this way, we have protection. Does this mean we can talk about custody arrangements, making things official? Eventually. Let's take it slow. We're figuring things out. All of us." That night, after the kids were in bed, they ended up on the balcony with wine, and the city spread out below them. Kinsley was wearing one of his hoodies. She'd stolen it a week ago, claiming she was cold, and he hadn't had the heart to ask for it back, and her hair was loose around her shoulders. "I missed this," she said softly. "Just sitting with you, talking about nothing important. We did this a lot before I ruined everything by running away. You didn't ruin everything. You did what you thought was right." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But Kinsley, if we're going to make this work, whatever this is, we need to be honest with each other. All the way honest. No more running when things get complicated." "I know, and I'm trying. But Seungjae, your business, I still don't really understand it. And part of me doesn't want to understand it, because then I'd have to make decisions about whether I can live with knowing." "What do you want to know? Do you hurt people? Like physically hurt them?" "Sometimes situations require conflict resolution. But I don't enjoy it, and I don't target innocents. What about the law? Are you breaking it? Frequently. She absorbed that, staring out at the city lights. Why? You're clearly smart enough to make money legitimately. You have the tech company, the real estate holdings. Those are legitimate. But they were built on foundations that weren't. And once you're in this world, getting out is complicated. People depend on me. Supply chains, distribution networks, protection services. If I just walked away, there'd be a power vacuum. And power vacuums get filled by people much worse than me. So you're what? A benevolent crime lord? I'm a pragmatist who tries not to make things worse than they have to be. She laughed, but it sounded tired. I wish you'd just been a normal accountant or something. This would be so much easier. If I was a normal accountant, we never would have met. You came into my life because you were covering that tech conference for the magazine you worked for, and I was there because I'd just bought the venue and needed to maintain appearances. Right. Well, the universe really set us up for failure from the start. But she was smiling now, remembering. You spilled coffee on my notes and then offered to buy me dinner as an apology. Best coffee spill of my life. Smooth, real smooth. She was closer now, had moved without him noticing. Or maybe he'd moved toward her. Either way, there were only inches between them, and he could see the exact moment she realized it too. We shouldn't, she said, but didn't move away. Probably not. It'll complicate everything. It's already complicated. The kids are asleep, and we're adults who can make our own decisions. She laughed softly. When did you get so good at arguing? I've always been good at arguing. You just forgot because you've been avoiding me for 4 years. Fair point. She was studying his face now, like she was trying to memorize it, or maybe trying to find a reason to walk away. If we do this, if we try again, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't lie to me. Ever. Even if the truth is ugly or scary, or makes me question everything. I'd rather know who you really are than love some version of you that doesn't exist. I promise. No lies. Okay then. She took a deep breath. Okay. Let's try this. Let's see if we can make it work. 2 months later, Malik's scans came back clear. Complete remission. Dr. Yijun was cautiously thrilled, already mapping out maintenance treatment plans and follow-up schedules. Kinsley cried again. Seemed like she did a lot of that these days, but mostly from relief and happiness instead of fear. They celebrated with cake and balloons, turning the apartment into a party zone. And Su-min invited every kid she'd met at the park, and suddenly there were a dozen preschoolers running around screaming while their parents stood in corners, looking slightly overwhelmed by the chaos. Tai-yang showed up with an enormous stuffed tiger that was bigger than Malik, earning himself honorary uncle status. This is insane, Kinsley said, surveying the destruction. There was cake smeared on at least 3 walls, and someone had knocked over an entire bowl of punch. Our security deposit is gone. Don't have a security deposit when you own the building, Sungjai reminded her. He was holding a sleeping Malik. The party had worn him out fast, but he'd been grinning the whole time. Besides, this is what childhood should look like. Messy and loud and full of joy. When did you become a philosopher? Around the time I became a dad. It does things to your brain. She smiled, reaching over to brush Malik's hair back from his face. The gesture was automatic, maternal, and it made Sungjai's chest feel tight in the best way. This was what he'd been missing. Not just the kids, but the whole package. The chaos and the love and the mundane, everyday moments that made life worth living. Move in with me, he said impulsively. What? Move in, officially. All your stuff is already here anyway, and the kids are settled. And he paused, trying to find the right words. We're good together. We work. So let's stop pretending this is temporary and make it real. Seung-jae, that's a big step. I know, but I'm ready for it if you are. She looked around at the destroyed apartment, at the kids running wild, at Tae-young trying unsuccessfully to corral a group of preschoolers away from the expensive electronics. You know what? Why not? Things can't get much crazier than this anyway. Is that a yes? That's a yes. He kissed her then, right there in the middle of the chaos, with Malik asleep in his arms and Sumin yelling about someone stealing her piece of cake. It wasn't smooth or romantic, definitely not movie-worthy, but it felt right in a way nothing else had in 4 years. When they broke apart, Kinsley was laughing. We're really doing this. We're really going to try to make this insane situation work. Wouldn't have it any other way. 6 months later, they'd fallen into a rhythm that almost looked normal from the outside. Malik was still in remission, growing stronger every day, and Sumin had started kindergarten and was apparently terrorizing her teachers with endless questions about everything. Kinsley had started freelancing again, writing articles from home between managing the kids' schedules, and Seung-jae was gradually transitioning out of the more dangerous aspects of his business, focusing on the legitimate operations, while Tae-young handled the rest. I'm not going fully straight, he'd explained to her one night. That's not realistic, but I can be straighter. Less hands-on with the questionable stuff. I'll take what I can get, she'd said. They weren't perfect. They fought sometimes, about discipline, about safety, about how much the kids needed to know about their father's real job. But they always worked through it, always came back to the same conclusion. They were better together than apart. Daddy, so come play, Su-min called from the living room. She'd started a game involving the stuffed tiger, several action figures, and an elaborate storyline only she understood. In a minute, baby. You always say in a minute, and then it's like an hour. Harsh, but fair. He looked at Kinsley, who was smiling at him from the kitchen. You coming? Someone has to make dinner, but I'll join the next game. Seung-jae got up and headed toward where his daughter was setting up her imaginary world. Malik was already there, building towers for the tiger to knock down. This was his life now. No more late nights negotiating deals, no more violence masquerading as business, just family. Kids and toys and dinner conversations about nothing important. And somehow, impossibly, it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Daddy, you're the tiger, Su-min announced, shoving the enormous stuffed animal at him. What's the tiger's motivation? He asked seriously. He's trying to get home, but he has to fight dragons first. Solid plot. Let's do this. From the kitchen, he could hear Kinsley humming while she cooked, and Malik was making explosion noises as his towers fell, and Su-min was narrating the tiger's epic journey in the most dramatic voice a 5-year-old could manage. It was chaos. It was noisy. It was absolutely perfect. And for the first time in years, Seung-jae felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Here's the thing, though. What's really getting me is how all of this could have been so different. You know? Like one choice, one moment in that airport, changed everything for all of them. Makes you think about your own life and the moments you might be missing. Anyway, subscribe and leave a comment if you think Kinsley made the right call running away at first, or if your team Seung-jae deserved to know from the start. Really curious what you all think.